My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old. And just a few weeks ago, I was called a plumber by my brother-in-law, right before I revealed something that left my entire family speechless. It all started on a bright Saturday morning at the harbor. I'd invited my parents, my older sister, and her husband, Tom, for what I told them was a weekend getaway on a friend's yacht. My tone was casual. I made sure not to dress too fancy. I wore a simple linen shirt, jean shorts, and flip-flops. I didn't want to give away anything. I watched as they arrived at the marina, marveling at the sleek white yacht waiting at Dock 14. The Serenity, 40 feet of polished fiberglass teak flooring and chrome finishes. She looked like she belonged in a movie. Tom was the first to speak. His tone was a mixture of sarcasm and disbelief. "You got this from a friend?" he asked, stepping onto the deck like he was inspecting merchandise. Must be a generous friend. "Do it!" People always hang out with yacht owners now. I smiled and nodded politely. I didn't bother correcting him. Tom is the kind of man who walks into every room like he owns it. He's married to my sister Caroline, and he works in finance. Loud finance. Think expensive suits, Bluetooth earpiece, constantly checking his stocks kind of guy. As the family settled in, my mother fussed over the seating cushions, while my dad inspected the navigation panel with mild interest. My sister looked uncomfortable in her wedge sandals. "There's Prosecco in the cooler," I said. "Help yourselves. I'll get lunch started soon." I stepped down into the galley to check on a minor issue I had noticed earlier. The faucet in the kitchen area was a bit loose. I grabbed a small wrench from the built-in tool drawer and started adjusting it. That's when I heard Tom behind me. "Whoa, we've got a plumber on board," he said with a smirk. "Careful, Emma, the rental company might start charging you labor." He laughed at his own joke. My hands paused on the faucet. I turned to look at him. He was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, looking pleased with himself. I gave him a small smile. "Just tightening something." "It's no big deal. You've always been good with tools," he continued. "I mean, you're not exactly known for your social skills, but hey, every family needs someone who can fix things." He said it like a compliment, but it landed like an insult. I looked him directly in the eyes. "Actually, Tom, this is my yacht." There was a pause. He stared at me, blinking. I said it again, calmly, evenly. "This is my yacht. I bought it. It's not rented, it's not borrowed, it's mine." His mouth opened then shut, and for the first time since I'd known him, Tom had no comeback. I had been waiting for this moment for a long, long time, because this wasn't just about a faucet, or a yacht, or a joke about plumbers. It was about everything that had led up to that moment. Every comment, every eye roll, every eye. Every time my family made me feel like I was never enough. And now standing on the deck of the Serenity with the sun glinting off the water, and my brother-in-law's smug face finally frozen in shock, I knew it was time to tell the full story. Not just about the yacht, but about everything that came before it, about what it means to be underestimated, about what it means to be overlooked, and about how sometimes the quiet one in the corner is simply waiting for the right moment to turn the whole table. Let me take you back, because to understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to see how many times I was made to feel small before I chose to stand tall. And how this yacht, this moment, this confrontation was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my worth. And this is how I took back the narrative. To understand how we got here, you need to understand where I came from. I was never the favorite. Not at school, not at work, and definitely not at home. Growing up, I was the second child in a household that valued tradition, stability, and appearances. My older sister Caroline was the golden girl. She did everything right. Straight A's, prom queen, married Tom right after college, a finance guy from a good family. They bought a house in the suburbs, got a golden retriever, and posted holiday cards every December. My parents adored that image. They clung to it. It made them feel like they had done something right. And me, I was the odd one out. The tech girl. I spent my teenage years building websites, coding on weekends, and tinkering with old laptops in the garage. I wore jeans when Caroline wore sundresses. I preferred silence to small talk. At dinner, I was often told I should smile more. Be more like your sister. By the time I was 24, I had already launched my second failed startup. Not that anyone in my family noticed or cared. To them, it was just more evidence that I wasn't on the right path. "You need a real job," Emma, my mom, once said during Christmas dinner. "Something with benefits, something with a future." I remember swallowing hard and saying nothing. Meanwhile, Tom would go on and on about crushing it at the office and how Caroline just made VP of marketing. Everyone would smile and nod. No one asked about me. At 27, I finally hit something real. My app, a team productivity tool built specifically for remote teams, started to take off. Slowly at first, some angel funding, then a small client base, then more. At 30, I hired my first team. At 31, we were acquired by a major tech firm. I walked away with enough money to buy a yacht, a house, and my freedom. But I told no one in my family. Why? Because I remembered every single dinner table silence, every backhanded comment, every time my own mother looked disappointed just because I didn't want the life Caroline had. And most of all, I remembered Tom. Tom, who once joked at Thanksgiving that I was the family's startup charity case. Tom, who told me I should really consider marrying someone in finance so I'd have a fallback. Tom, who had once asked me if I was still living in that basement apartment with all the wires. So when I got the call that Mom's birthday was coming up and Caroline was planning something simple, I had an idea. What if I hosted something I told them I had a connection who could lend us a yacht for the day? Just a little gathering on the water. Relaxed, elegant, nothing fancy. They were surprised, a little skeptical, but they agreed. I hired a caterer, stocked the wine, and planned the whole thing myself. I kept the ownership papers in a folder tucked in the captain's cabin. I even installed a small screen to connect to the onboard security system. It wasn't about showing off, it was about clarity. I wanted to see just once how my family would treat me if they thought I was still beneath them. Turns out nothing had changed. Caroline thanked me, but barely looked around. Mom pointed out the dust on the railing. Dad said, "You know your sister's friend is getting married on a yacht next month. Hers is even bigger." And Tom spent the first hour walking around like he was hosting the event himself. When the faucet in the galley got a little loose and I offered to fix it, he smirked. "You sure you know what you're doing?" Emma wouldn't want to flood the whole rental. And when I adjusted it easily with a quick turn of the wrench, he clapped. "Wow, our very own onboard plumber. You've really made it." I didn't say anything then, I just smiled. I poured another glass of wine. I let them talk. Because I knew what was coming. I knew the moment would arrive when the weight of their assumptions would finally collapse under the truth. And that truth was simple. The girl they once ignored, the daughter they underestimated, the sister they mocked, she now owned everything they were standing on. I didn't get here by accident. I got here because I stopped waiting for approval and started building something of my own. The Serenity wasn't just a yacht. It was proof that I didn't need anyone to believe in me, only myself. And soon they would see it too. Lunch was scheduled for 1 p.m. I had set the table in the main salon with white linen napkins, real crystal wine glasses, and handmade ceramic plates. Everything was arranged carefully down to the rosemary sprigs tucked into the silverware. A soft jazz playlist drifted through the speakers overhead. I had thought of everything, but even the best plans can't silence old habits. Caroline walked in wearing sunglasses indoors and muttering about the sea breeze being too harsh. Mom complained that the deck was too slippery. Dad kept checking his phone for news alerts. And Tom had made himself very comfortable. He was pouring himself another glass of the white wine I had chilled especially for lunch. "Wow, this bottle alone probably costs more than your rent, Emma," he said, chuckling. I had to bite the inside of my cheek. I hadn't rented a home in almost 6 years. But I nodded and turned away. "You know," he added, swirling the wine lazily, "you should really ask your friend if they're looking to sell this boat. You could maybe put together a crowdfunding campaign or something. Might be a fun project for your next app." There was that tone again, dismissive. I'd heard it 1,000 times. I could write code in 4 languages, but to Tom, I was just a girl playing entrepreneur. Caroline laughed softly. "Oh, come on, Tom. Be nice." "I'm serious," he said. "Boats like this are a money pit. Unless your friend is a millionaire, they're probably bleeding just keeping it docked. I mean, look at that countertop. Marble. Really? On a rental." He ran his hand across the surface like he was appraising it. Probably get scratched by all the clumsy guests. Then, as if the universe wanted to give him a stage, he reached for the wine and accidentally tipped the entire bottle over. The wine sloshed across the table, soaking the linen and dripping down the mahogany edge. "Oops," he said, almost smirking. "Guess I'll leave a tip for the cleaning crew." Caroline sighed. Mom dabbed at the table with a napkin. "Don't worry, Emma," she said, not even looking at me. "I'm sure the rental company has insurance for stuff like this." I clenched my jaw. "Actually, I said I'll handle it. It's not a problem." Tom looked amused. "Oh, yeah. You have a cleaning service on speed dial?" "No," I said. "I'll clean it myself." I walked to the galley, grabbed a towel and spray, and returned. As I wiped the table, Tom leaned against the wall. "Wow, you really are handy. I mean, plumber made what's next? Maybe the rental company should just hire you." That was the moment something in me started to crystallize. The rest of the lunch was a blur. Caroline scrolled on her phone. My parents reminisced about some distant cousin's wedding on a lake. Tom spent a lot of time exploring the yacht's lower deck. He came up at one point and muttered something about the faucet in the galley acting weird. I nodded but didn't respond. Later, I went down to check. The faucet was broken. The handle twisted unnaturally. Water poured out in a thin stream that wouldn't stop. I turned off the shutoff valve underneath, then knelt to examine the damage. Scratches on the chrome. Pliers had been used. Not an accident. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But I knew. Tom had done this. Maybe to prove a point. Maybe just because he could. Maybe because in his mind, the idea of me, Emma the outsider, hosting this picture-perfect lunch on a luxury yacht, it didn't compute. So he broke something. Something small but deliberate. A sabotage disguised as a mishap. He thought I would panic, that I would call the rental company and fumble my way through it, that he'd get a laugh watching me struggle. But what he didn't know was that the Serenity had a built-in camera system recently installed with high-definition feeds covering the interior. And what he also didn't know was that I already had the footage. I didn't confront him then. Not in front of everyone. I let the day go on. I let them sip wine. I let them eat the carefully prepared salmon with lemon herb couscous. I let them smile for group selfies on the upper deck. But inside, I was done playing small. By the time dessert was served, pistachio tartlets with fresh whipped cream, I had made my decision. Tom thought he had just embarrassed me. He had no idea what was coming. By the time everyone had moved to the upper deck for coffee, the sun was dipping lower into the horizon. The sky turned a pale gold, and the harbor shimmered like a painting. They lounged on the cushioned seats beneath the canvas awning, chatting, sipping espresso. Laughter floated in the air, soft, disconnected, casual. No one noticed that I hadn't spoken in a while. I stayed below deck where the soft hum of the air system blended with the faint creak of the hull. I pulled the security panel out from its hidden cabinet in the navigation room. The screen lit up with 8 high-definition feeds, each time-stamped and crystal clear. It didn't take long to find it. 3:47 p.m. Tom walking into the galley. 3:49 p.m. Inspecting the faucet, testing it. Water runs, water stops, perfect condition. 3:50 p.m. He looks around, makes sure no one is nearby. And then he grabs the faucet handle with both hands and jerks it sideways. Once, twice. The metal flexes under the pressure, groaning audibly in the quiet feed. He braces his foot against the cabinet base for leverage. Another pull. Snap. The water begins flowing uncontrolled. His expression, not panic, satisfaction. Then, as casually as if he were folding laundry, he takes a dish towel and wipes down the chrome, even runs a finger under the base to check for debris. His movements are practiced. This isn't his first lie. I copied the footage to my tablet. It took less than a minute. Then I walked upstairs. When I appeared on the deck again carrying my tablet under one arm and a cup of coffee in the other, Tom smiled at me. "Everything good down there?" he asked, tone light. "All good," I said, returning the smile. "You didn't have any issues with the plumbing, did you?" he added, the corner of his mouth curling slightly. There it was, the bait. "No," I replied, sipping the coffee. "Actually, now that you mention it, there was a bit of damage, but nothing I couldn't handle." Caroline glanced over. "Damage?" The faucet in the galley, I said. It was working fine earlier. Then suddenly, not. Tom gave a small shrug. Must be the rental company cutting corners. Dad nodded in agreement. I've always said those things are built for looks, not durability. I set the coffee down on the table and placed the tablet in front of me. It's funny, I said. That's exactly what I thought until I checked the footage. Tom's eyebrows lifted. Footage? The yacht has a full camera system, I said, casually flipping the tablet open. Motion activated, 8 angles, inside and out. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Tom laughed, but it was tight. Wow, paranoid rental company, huh? Actually, I said, turning the screen toward him, I had them installed last month, just after I bought the yacht. Silence. No one moved. Bought, Caroline said quietly. Yes, I replied. This isn't a rental. I looked straight at Tom. This is my yacht. He blinked. Wait, what? I repeated it clearly. I bought the Serenity in March, paid in full, registered with the Coast Guard, slip fees, insurance, maintenance. It's all in my name. The tablet screen played the footage in silence. Tom in the galley, Tom twisting the faucet, Tom bracing his foot, Tom wiping the crime scene. Everyone watched. No one spoke. When the clip ended, I set the tablet down. Caroline was the first to break the silence. Emma, you bought a yacht. I nodded. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. Tom's face had gone pale. He looked like he wanted to speak, but no words came. You know what's funny, I added. This whole thing this day was meant to be a gift. I had planned to surprise you all. I was going to tell you over dessert that the Serenity was yours, Caroline. A wedding anniversary gift for you and Tom. Her mouth opened slightly, her eyes filled with tears, but no sound came. That was the plan, I said. I imagined you two sailing up the coast, taking Dad fishing, giving Mom a quiet place to write her poetry. I wanted to give you something beautiful. Then I paused. But instead, I got to watch my own family talk down to me. I watched Tom destroy something I owned. I watched you all laugh while I cleaned it up. Caroline reached for my hand. Emma, please, I pulled it back. You didn't break a faucet, Tom. You broke the one chance I was giving you to see me differently. Tom finally found his voice. Look, okay? Yes, I touched the faucet, but I didn't know it was yours. Exactly, I said. You thought it was someone else's, and you were okay with destroying it. That's not just disrespectful, that's who you are. I turned to my parents. And the rest of you, you didn't say anything when he mocked me. You didn't stop him. You've never stopped him. You've watched him treat me like I'm some basement-dwelling dropout for years, and no one said a word. Dad looked down at his hands. Mom's eyes were glassy. Emma. I didn't realize. You never do, I said, because you don't see me. You never have. Tom stood up, hands raised in false surrender. Okay, let's not blow this out of proportion. It's a faucet. No, I said. It's the final straw. Caroline's voice was shaking. Are you saying we have to leave? I sighed. I'm saying that today showed me exactly where I stand, and it's not with you. You all treated me like I was less than. So maybe it's time I stopped trying to be part of a table that was never built for me. Tom turned to Caroline. Come on, this is insane. She's clearly overreacting. Caroline hesitated. Her eyes bounced between me and him. Emma, she said softly, I didn't know you felt this way. Because you didn't ask, I replied. Caroline's lip trembled. I was going to give you this yacht. I took a breath. But I'm keeping it. You might be wondering why I went to such lengths just to prove a point. But this wasn't just about one moment, or one insult, or one broken faucet. This was about 1,000 tiny moments that stacked up into a wall that kept me on the outside of my own family. The truth is, I started being invisible at home long before I ever moved out. When I was 13, I won first place in a regional robotics competition. I built a drone from scratch. I stayed up 3 nights in a row programming its route, perfecting its sensors. I came home with a medal, clutching it in both hands, glowing with pride. Mom asked if I had cleaned my room. Dad asked if Caroline had come to watch. No one asked how I did it. Caroline, meanwhile, got a standing ovation at her choir recital 2 days later. She wore a blue velvet dress. Everyone said she looked like a star. At 18, I got into a competitive tech program out of state on scholarship. We thought you might apply somewhere closer, Mom said. Somewhere safer, more normal. They didn't come to my orientation. Caroline had a job interview that week. At 21, I graduated early. Magna cum laude. I sent a photo in my cap and gown. No one replied. When Caroline got engaged to Tom that summer, everything was about the wedding. I was assigned to organize flower delivery and help with spreadsheets. That was their way of saying, stay in the background, stay useful. I paid for part of the honeymoon, quietly. Tom was having a temporary liquidity issue, and Caroline was stressed. I transferred money from my own savings. They never paid me back. I never asked. At 25, I launched my first startup. It failed after 6 months. Dad shook his head and said, "That's what happens when you play pretend at business." I moved into a tiny basement apartment, worked nights, taught coding workshops on weekends to scrape by. Caroline sent me Pinterest boards for budget-friendly career women interiors. Tom sent me an Excel sheet to track the money you lose more efficiently. At 27, I made it to my first round of funding. When I told them over dinner, Caroline said, "So it's a hobby and a job now?" I smiled. I always smiled. At 30, my company hit profitability. We were hiring fast. My team grew to 10, then 20. I flew home for Thanksgiving that year. Mom asked if I was dating anyone. Caroline asked if I was still renting that little place. Tom asked how long I thought this startup phase would last. I told them I'd just signed a long-term lease for new office space. Tom raised a brow. "And how are you paying for that?" I told them not to worry. They did anyway. Worried I'd ask for help, worried I'd fail. Never once wondered if I might succeed. And when I finally did, when I signed the acquisition deal, when my company was valued at over 8 figures, when my share transferred into a personal account, with more zeros than I had ever seen, they weren't the first people I told. In fact, I didn't tell them at all. Because the truth is, I didn't want them to know me only when I had something impressive to offer. I wanted them to see me when I had nothing. And they did. They saw me as disposable, forgettable, a girl with a wrench and a half-finished dream. That's what made their reaction on the yacht so revealing. Because it wasn't new. It was honest. It was what they had always thought. That I was beneath them, that I wasn't enough, that I should be grateful just to be invited. And maybe I was. Grateful, I mean. Grateful for the clarity. Grateful that I didn't give away the serenity before learning what was real. Because some lessons cost money and some lessons cost peace. But this one cost a faucet. And it was worth every drop. Tom stood there with his arms crossed, trying to salvage what little dignity he thought he had left. "Look, Emma," he said, "it's not like I meant to break anything. I was just trying to help." I tilted my head slightly. "Help, yeah. I noticed the faucet was loose and I thought maybe I could fix it. I didn't realize I needed permission." He smiled like we were both in on a joke, but no one was laughing. I glanced at the rest of my family. Mom was sitting rigidly upright, clutching her wine glass. Dad stared at a spot on the teak floor like he'd found something wrong with the wood grain. Caroline was still pale silent beside Tom, eyes flicking between us like a referee who'd lost control of the game. "I see," I said slowly. "You were just helping. That explains why you checked to make sure no one was watching, why you used tools, why you twisted the fixture with enough force to crack the seal." He opened his mouth to object, but I raised my hand, and then wiped the evidence off so no one would know. His mouth shut. "You thought this was a rental. You thought I was pretending. And you wanted to put me in my place. That's not help, Tom. That's sabotage." "Emma," Caroline said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He didn't know." "That's the point," I said, looking right at her. "He didn't know. And this is how he chose to act." I turned back to Tom. "You've always had this way of talking down to me. Joking, laughing, little jabs. Always just playful, right?" He didn't respond. I let it go for years. Told myself to keep the peace. Told myself it wasn't worth the fight. That maybe I was too sensitive. That maybe I just wasn't cut out for family events. But today you broke something. And now I see clearly. Tom's eyes narrowed. So what, you're kicking us off the boat? Yes, you're seriously yes, I said firmly. Your guests here. And guests who destroy property and mock the host don't get to stay. Especially not when the property is worth more than everything you own combined. Tom scoffed. Oh, come on. You're going to throw away family over a faucet. No, I said. I'm throwing away people who never treated me like family in the first place. His jaw tightened. He looked to Caroline, clearly expecting her to defend him. But she didn't. Caroline. Her hands were shaking. I don't even know what to say. Emma, she turned to me. I didn't know. About the yacht. About everything. You never asked, I said, quietly. She looked down. And now that you do know, I added, it shouldn't matter. Because it was never about what I owned. It was about respect. Dad finally cleared his throat. Emma, I don't think this is the right way to handle a family dispute. I raised an eyebrow. I think you've had 32 years to handle it. And all I ever got was silence. Mom chimed in, then voice trembling. It's just hard, Emma. You've always been different. You mean difficult. No, she said quickly. Just not what we expected, and that was the problem, wasn't it? They had written the script, and I had the audacity to want to improvise. I turned back to Tom. You can pack your things. I'll have a car waiting at the marina. You're not serious. Dead serious. He looked stunned, furious, humiliated. Caroline rose slowly. I'll go too. She looked at me. Unless you want me to stay? I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to say yes. But I also wanted her to make the choice without being handed a script. That's up to you, I said. She looked down at her wedding ring, then at Tom. We'll go, she said. I watched them walk across the deck, down the gangway. No one spoke. The sun was low now, casting a long orange path across the water. When they were gone, I turned to my parents. If you'd like to leave too, I understand. Dad opened his mouth, but Mom touched his arm. No, she said softly. We'd like to stay, please. I nodded. And for a few minutes, we stood there in silence. 3 people learning how to be in a space that had never quite belonged to all of us before. Eventually, I picked up the tablet and returned it to the cabinet. The faucet was still broken, but something else had been fixed. The Serenity rocked gently in her slip as the last of the golden sun dipped below the horizon. The harbor settled into a calm hush, and for the first time all day, I felt still inside. After Tom and Caroline left, I poured my parents fresh coffee and brought out a plate of fruit and almond cookies I had made myself the night before. We sat quietly for a while. No lectures, no side comments, just quiet. Dad eventually broke the silence. You built something incredible, Emma. I didn't answer. I just nodded. We may not have said it before, he added, but we're proud of you. I looked at him. His hands were wrapped around the coffee mug like he wasn't sure what else to hold on to. I saw the regret in his face. And for once, I didn't rush to ease it. Some things have to sit for a while. After a while, they went below deck to rest. I stayed on the upper deck, the ocean breeze wrapping around me like an old friend. The sky above was dark now, stars beginning to blink their way into view. I leaned against the rail, staring out across the still water. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. All the nights alone in that basement apartment. The ramen dinners, the bounce client checks, the whiteboard full of scribbles no one believed in but me. I thought about the dinners I sat through smiling while Tom talked over me. The holidays I spent trying to make conversation that never went anywhere. The gifts I bought that were barely opened. The silence after every small success. And I thought about today. About how easy it would have been to let it slide. Again, to fix the faucet. Again, to smile and say it's fine. Again, but I didn't. Because something changed. Not just the money, not just the yacht, me. I stopped apologizing for who I was. I stopped hoping for approval from people who had already decided what I was worth. And in doing so, I gave myself something I'd never had from them: respect. The funny thing is, I didn't need to prove anything to Tom. I didn't need to prove anything to Caroline or my parents. I needed to prove it to myself. That I could stand tall in the face of dismissal. That I could stay calm when they tried to shrink me. that I could say no more and mean it. So, no, this wasn't about a yacht. This wasn't about revenge. This was about clarity and boundaries and finally drawing the line. Because the truth is, sometimes family isn't where you're born. It's who shows up, it's who listens, it's who sees you without asking you to change. I don't know what will happen with Caroline and Tom. Maybe they'll figure things out. Maybe they won't. Maybe someday we'll talk again. Maybe not. But I do know this. Next time someone calls me just a plumber, I'll smile the same way I did today. Because I know the truth. The girl with the wrench, she built a life. She fixed herself. And this time, she's keeping the yacht.